The projector screen behind the head table flickered to life, casting a warm, soft glow across the faces of our wedding guests. My new husband, Liam, squeezed my hand under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my skin. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, and whispered, "Ready to see our life in pictures, Mrs. Davies?" I smiled, a genuine, heart-filling smile that I felt all the way to my toes. This was it, the perfect end to a perfect day. The culmination of months of planning, years of dreaming, and a love that felt as solid and real as the ground beneath my feet. Our photographer, a quiet but brilliant artist named Alex, had put together a slideshow for us, a journey from our awkward first date to this very moment, sitting here as husband and wife. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers, and now, a special presentation from the happy couple. The room fell into a hushed, expectant silence. My sister, Chloe, my maid of honor, raised her champagne flute from her seat beside me, her smile a little too bright, a little too sharp at the edges. "To my little sister, Amelia," she'd said during her speech just moments before, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness, finally getting her fairy tale. "I couldn't be happier for you." The room had erupted in applause, and I had felt a tear slip down my cheek. For a fleeting moment, I let myself believe that she meant it, that the years of subtle digs, of being overshadowed, of feeling like the lesser sister, were finally behind us. I was so naive. The first few photos flashed on the screen. There we were, Liam and I, goofy and young, on a hiking trip. Then at a Christmas market, bundled in scarves, our noses red from the cold. A picture of him proposing on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The shock and joy plain on my face. A soft wave of awes rippled through the reception hall. My parents were beaming. Liam's parents looked on with pride. Everything was exactly as it should be. The screen went black for a second, a transition. I squeezed Liam's hand, ready for the next wave of happy memories. But what appeared next wasn't a photo of our first apartment or our goofy golden retriever. The image that filled the massive screen was sharp, professionally taken, and utterly devastating. It was my sister, Chloe. Her back was pressed against the brick wall of an alleyway, her head tilted back in what could only be described as ecstasy. Her dress, the same silky emerald green she was wearing right now as my maid of honor, was hiked up around her waist, and the man she was wrapped around, the man whose hands were tangled in her hair, whose mouth was locked with hers in a searing, passionate kiss, was Mark, Liam's best friend, our best man. A single, collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It was so sudden, so absolute, that the silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. I felt Liam's hand go rigid in mine. His body went ramrod straight, and I could feel the shock vibrating through him. I turned to look at Chloe. The brilliant, self-satisfied smile was gone, replaced by a mask of chalky white horror. Her champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. Her eyes were wide, locked on the screen, her mouth opening and closing silently like a fish gasping for air. Across the room, Mark's wife, Sarah, a sweet woman who was 8 months pregnant, let out a sound, a choked, wounded sob that tore through my own heart. And then the next photo flashed on the screen. And the next? Each one more damning, more intimate, more shockingly intimate than the last. The fairy tale wasn't just over. It had just become a public execution, and I was the one who had supplied the axe. I'm so glad you're here, because if you're watching this, you need to understand how a bride on her wedding day could unleash such a calculated, devastating revenge. You need to know that this wasn't an act of spontaneous rage. It was the final, desperate move in a war that had been waged against me my entire life. a war I hadn't even realized I was losing until my beautiful, perfect wedding dress lay in a heap on the floor, torn and stained, and my sister's laughter was the only sound in the room. To understand, you have to know about Chloe. From the moment I was born, Chloe was the sun, and I was the planet that silently orbited her. She was 2 years older, blonder, louder, and infinitely more confident. Our parents, without ever meaning to be cruel, orbited her too. Chloe's soccer trophies lined the mantelpiece while my baking awards were tucked away in a drawer. Chloe's dramatic breakups were family crises that required hours of discussion, while my quiet heartbreaks were met with a pat on the shoulder and a "you'll get over it, honey." She was the star, and I was the stagehand, the quiet, reliable one who made sure her costumes were ready and her cues were met. I baked her favorite cookies after a bad day, helped her cram for exams she'd ignored all semester, and lent her money from my waitressing job that I knew I'd never see again. I did it because I loved her, and because I thought that's what sisters did. I thought my quiet loyalty would one day be seen, be valued. When I met Liam, everything changed for me. He was the first person who seemed to see me first. He loved my quiet nature. He called my baking a superpower. And he listened, truly listened, when I talked. For the first time, I felt like the main character in my own life. Chloe was, of course, outwardly thrilled. "Oh, Ames, he's perfect," she'd gushed after meeting him. "So handsome! You did so well." But underneath, I could feel the subtle shift. Her compliments were always followed by a little dig. "He's so patient. He's perfect for someone as sensitive as you." Or she would flirt with him. Not overtly, but in that way she had a lingering touch on his arm, a laugh that was a little too throaty, a story that always managed to highlight her own adventures while subtly painting me as boring. Liam, bless his heart, was completely immune. He'd just smile politely and steer the conversation back to me. "Amelia's the adventurous one," he'd say. "You should see her trying to perfect a new croissant recipe. It's like a science experiment and an art project all in one." The wedding planning was where Chloe's sabotage went from subtle to overt. She was my maid of honor, a role she accepted with a dramatic sigh as if it were a great burden. "Of course I'll do it," she said. Who else would? She critiqued every choice I made. The flowers were tacky, the venue was a little dated, the invitations were boring. She forgot to send out emails to the bridesmaids about dress fittings and was too busy to help me address envelopes. Every step of the way, she made me feel small, like my dream wedding was a second-rate production. But the one thing I wouldn't budge on was the dress. I'd saved for it for 2 years, ever since I saw it in a small bridal boutique window. It was everything I wasn't. Bold, elegant, and breathtaking. It was an A-line gown with delicate, hand-stitched lace that cascaded down the bodice and onto a flowing tulle skirt. It had a sweetheart neckline and tiny, pearl buttons that ran all the way down the back. When I tried it on, for the first time in my life, I felt beautiful. Truly, unequivocally beautiful. Not Chloe's sister, just Amelia. Beautiful. The final fitting was 2 weeks before the wedding. My mom was there, along with Chloe. I stood on the pedestal in front of the three-way mirror, turning slowly, watching the way the skirt shimmered under the boutique's lights. My mom had tears in her eyes. "Oh, Amelia," she whispered. "You look like an angel." I caught my own reflection, and for a second, I believed her. I was radiant. Chloe was holding a glass of celebratory champagne the boutique had offered. She walked around me, her eyes narrowed, inspecting the dress like a critic looking for flaws. "The waist could be a little tighter, don't you think?" she said, her voice flat. "It's making you look a bit wide." Before I could even process the sting of her words, she stumbled. It was a theatrical, clumsy lurch that wasn't believable for a second. The glass of dark red champagne tilted, and the entire contents cascaded down the front of my pristine, ivory white dress. A huge, ugly crimson stain bloomed across the delicate lace bodice. I gasped, looking down in horror. The seamstress shrieked. My mom rushed forward with a cloth, dabbing uselessly at the spreading stain. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that in her stumble, Chloe's stiletto heel had caught the hem of the tulle skirt. There was a sickening ripping sound, and a huge, jagged tear appeared in the delicate fabric. My dream dress was ruined, stained and ripped. I stood there in shock, my eyes welling with tears, my throat too tight to speak. I looked from the ruined dress to my sister's face, expecting to see horror, regret, and apology. But what I saw instead shattered something deep inside me. She wasn't looking at the dress. She was looking at my reflection in the mirror, at my devastated face, and she was trying to hide a smile. It was a tiny, fleeting thing, a flicker of triumph in her eyes, but I saw it. And then, as if she couldn't contain it anymore, she let out a small, choked laugh, a laugh of pure, unadulterated victory. That was the moment the war began. And if you want to know how I went from a heartbroken bride with a ruined dress to a vengeful woman with a projector screen, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. You're not going to want to miss a single second of what comes next. The silence in the bridal boutique after Chloe's laugh was thick and heavy, broken only by the frantic, useless dabbing of the seamstress and my mother's horrified gasps. My own breath was trapped in my chest, a painful, immovable weight. The laughter, that small, triumphant sound, echoed in my ears, louder and more destructive than the sound of the ripping fabric. It was the sound of a lifetime of slights, of being second best, of quiet manipulations, all culminating in this one perfect act of cruelty. The red wine stain on my dress felt like a mortal wound, bleeding out across the lace, and the jagged tear was the physical manifestation of my heart ripping in two. My dream hadn't just been damaged. It had been murdered, and my own sister was holding the weapon. Oh my God, Amelia, I am so sorry. Chloe's voice was a torrent of fake panic, her hands flying to her mouth in a gesture of exaggerated shock. My heel just caught. I can't believe I was so clumsy. Oh, this is all my fault. Her performance was flawless. The way her eyes widened, the tremor in her voice, it was Oscar-worthy. Anyone else would have believed her. My mom, bless her heart, was already buying it. It was an accident, Chloe. Don't be so hard on yourself, she said. Her attention focused on the seamstress, a petite, older Italian woman named Isabella, who was now muttering curses under her breath as she assessed the damage. But I had seen her face in the mirror. I had seen that flash of victory, that flicker of a smile. I knew this was no accident. This was a targeted strike, delivered with precision on the one day, the one moment, when I was supposed to be the center of attention. I couldn't speak. The words were log-jammed behind the lump of betrayal in my throat. I just stared at her, my eyes burning with unshed tears and a new, unfamiliar emotion. A cold, clear-eyed rage. She met my gaze for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, the mask slipped. The panic in her eyes vanished, replaced by a look of hard, defiant challenge. It was a silent message, passed between us in that sterile, white-on-white boutique. Yes, I did it. What are you going to do about it? Isabella finally stood up, her face grim. The stain, maybe. With special chemicals, we can try to lift it, but the lace is delicate. It may be damaged. The tear, she sighed, shaking her head. This is not a simple seam. This is tulle, To repair it without it showing, it is almost impossible. It would need to be completely restructured. My mother's face fell. How long would that take? She asked, her voice trembling. Isabella looked at the calendar on her desk. Weeks, maybe a month. I have other brides, other gowns. I cannot drop everything. Your wedding is in 2 weeks, yes? 2 weeks. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. My perfect dress was gone. The one I had saved for, dreamed of, the one that made me feel like a queen, was now a casualty of my sister's jealousy. Chloe rushed forward, grabbing my arm. Don't worry, Ames! We'll find you another one. A better one. I'll help you pay for it, I promise. Her words were meant to sound generous, but they were laced with poison. She knew there wasn't time. She knew that finding another dress, getting it fitted, and having it ready in 2 weeks was a Herculean task. She was offering a solution she knew was impossible, just to maintain her facade of the caring sister. I finally found my voice. It came out as a raw, shaky whisper. Get away from me. Chloe recoiled as if I'd slapped her. Amelia, I'm just trying to help, I said. Get away from me, I repeated, my voice stronger this time. I stepped off the pedestal, the torn fabric trailing behind me like a funeral shroud. I walked into the changing room and shut the door, leaning my back against it as the first sob finally broke free. I didn't cry for long. The pain was too deep for tears. It was a hollow, aching void where my trust and love for my sister used to be. After a few minutes, the raw grief began to crystallize into something harder, colder. Determination. She wanted to ruin my wedding. She wanted to see me walk down the aisle in a second-rate dress. Feeling defeated, I would not give her the satisfaction. When I came out, dressed in my normal clothes, I was calm. My face was pale, but my hands were steady. I turned to Isabella. Is there anything you can do? I asked. My voice even. She looked at me with pity in her eyes. I can try to clean it. I can try to patch the tear with a lace applique to hide it. It will not be the same dress you fell in love with, but it will be wearable. I nodded. Do it. Do whatever you can. The car ride home was a silent, tense affair. My mom kept trying to fill the quiet with platitudes. Everything happens for a reason, and it's not the dress that matters, it's the marriage. Chloe sat in the front seat, pointedly looking out the window, playing the part of the wounded party who had been unfairly snapped at. I didn't say a word. I just watched the city lights blur past, my mind racing. When we got home, I went straight to my room and called Liam. I told him what happened, my voice breaking as I described the stain, the tear, and the look on Chloe's face. Liam was silent for a long moment, and then he said one word, his voice low and dangerous. Mark. What about Mark? I asked, confused. Her alibi, he said. The best man. She's been leaning on him a lot lately for wedding help, hasn't she? Always texting him. Always pulling him aside at family dinners for a quick question about the bachelor party. She makes it look like she's being the perfect, helpful maid of honor. But she's using my best friend to get close, to gather information, to have a partner in her little schemes. At the time, I thought he was just angry on my behalf, that he was seeing conspiracies where there were none. I defended her, a reflex honed over a lifetime. Liam, she wouldn't do that. Mark is your best friend. He's married. Sarah's pregnant. Amelia, Liam said, his voice firm but gentle. Your sister is a narcissist. She can't stand for anyone else to be happy. I've seen the way she looks at you when you're not paying attention. It's not love. It's resentment. Just be careful. Watch her. Watch them both. His words planted a tiny, dark seed of suspicion in my mind. Could he be right? Was her cruelty not just random, but part of a larger, more intricate game? A few days later, we had a final planning meeting at the venue with our wedding coordinator, Liam, myself, Chloe, and Mark. The topic was the slideshow. We were sorting through photos, laughing at old embarrassing pictures. I watched them. Liam was right. Chloe and Mark were sitting next to each other, and their interactions felt off. Their knees were pressed together under the table. When Chloe laughed at something Mark said, she threw her head back, but her hand landed on his thigh. A gesture that was just a little too intimate, that lasted just a second too long. Mark didn't flinch. He just smiled at her. A private, knowing kind of smile. They shared a look, a quick, fleeting glance when they thought no one was watching, that was charged with a secret energy. It was so subtle, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it, that I was letting Liam's words and my own anger color my perception. But my gut, that deep, primal instinct, was screaming at me. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. My sister hadn't just ruined my dress. I was starting to suspect she was trying to ruin my entire life. And as I sat there, feigning interest in choosing the right font for the place cards, I made a decision. I wouldn't be a victim anymore. I would start paying attention. I would start looking for the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. The seed of suspicion had taken root. In the days that followed that planning meeting, my life became a strange duality. On the surface, I was the frantic, stressed-out bride, consumed with last-minute wedding details. I was on the phone with florists, caterers, and the venue, finalizing seating charts and confirming timelines. I smiled. I nodded. I played the part. But underneath that frantic energy, a different part of me was operating in a state of hypervigilance. I had become a detective in my own life, and my primary suspects were my own sister and my fiancé's best friend. Every interaction between them was now under my microscope. Every word, every look, every gesture analyzed for hidden meaning. It was exhausting. I felt like I was losing my mind, caught in a paranoid spiral where every innocent action seemed like a clue to a devastating conspiracy. I'd lie awake at night, replaying the day's events, searching for evidence. Did Chloe laugh a little too hard at Mark's joke? Did they stand a little too close to each other while waiting for coffee? Did that text message Mark just received make him smile in a way that seemed suspiciously familiar? I was second-guessing everything, and the strain was starting to show. I had dark circles under my eyes, and I was jumpy and irritable. Liam noticed, of course. "Are you okay, honey?" he asked one evening as I stared blankly at a spreadsheet of RSVPs. "You seem a million miles away." I wanted to tell him everything, to pour out all the ugly suspicions that were festering in my mind. But what could I say? "I think my sister is having an affair with your best friend because her hand lingered on his thigh for 2 seconds. He would think I was crazy, that the stress of the wedding and the trauma of the ruined dress had pushed me over the edge. He was already so angry with Chloe on my behalf. I didn't want to add a baseless accusation against his best friend into the mix. Mark had been Liam's friend since kindergarten. They were more like brothers. Accusing him of something so vile without proof would be catastrophic. So I just shook my head and forced a smile. "Just wedding stress?" I lied. "It's all a bit overwhelming." My bakery, the Rolling Pin, which had always been my sanctuary, now became my command center. Amidst the comforting smells of yeast and sugar, I would dissect the day's intelligence. The bachelorette party, which Chloe had reluctantly organized, was a treasure trove of suspicious behavior. It was supposed to be a fun, silly night at a local wine and paint studio, but Chloe spent most of the night on her phone, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips as she texted. At one point, I walked past her and glanced at her screen. The name at the top of the conversation was just an initial, M. My heart hammered in my chest. M for Mark? It had to be. Later that night, after a few too many glasses of Merlot, one of the other bridesmaids, a bubbly girl named Jessica, cornered me by the dessert table. "Is everything okay with Chloe?" She slurred, gesturing with her wine glass. "She seems really distracted, and she keeps talking about Mark." I straightened up, my senses suddenly sharp despite the wine. "What is she saying about him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Jessica shrugged. "Oh, you know, just how helpful he's been. How he's the only one who gets the pressure she's under as maid of honor. She called him her work husband for the wedding. It was a little weird, honestly. Work husband. The phrase sent a chill down my spine. It was one of those cutesy, inappropriate terms that blurred boundaries, that provided a plausible excuse for an intimacy that crossed the line. The evidence was circumstantial, but it was piling up, creating a larger picture that was getting harder and harder to ignore. The final straw came during the joint bachelorette party a few days later. Liam and his friends, including Mark, had gone to a steakhouse, while we had dinner at a nice Italian restaurant downtown. The plan was to meet up at a popular bar afterward for drinks and dancing. Throughout dinner, Chloe was antsy, constantly checking her watch. As soon as we finished our tiramisu, she was on her feet, herding us towards the door. "Come on, girls, let's not keep the boys waiting," she trilled, her voice high with an almost manic energy. When we arrived at the bar, it was crowded and loud. The guys were already there, settled into a large booth in the corner. I saw Liam and waved, my heart lifting at the sight of his handsome, smiling face. But my eyes immediately scanned for Chloe and Mark. They found each other instantly, like two magnets clicking together. While everyone else was hugging and shouting greetings over the music, they met in the middle of the crowd. I watched from the edge of the group as Mark leaned in to say something in Chloe's ear. He didn't pull away immediately. His hand came up to rest on the small of her back, his fingers splayed out possessively. Chloe leaned into his touch, her head tilting towards his, her eyes closing for just a second. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated intimacy, happening in plain sight, yet hidden from everyone who wasn't looking for it. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, but for me, it felt like an eternity. In that moment, I knew it wasn't paranoia, it wasn't stress, it was real. I felt dizzy, the loud music and flashing lights of the bar suddenly overwhelming. I needed air. I mumbled an excuse to Liam and pushed my way through the throng of people towards the back exit, which led to a small, quiet alleyway. I stood there, leaning against the cool brick wall, taking deep, shuddering breaths. The cold night air felt good on my flushed skin. The seed of suspicion had bloomed into a grotesque, undeniable certainty. My sister, my maid of honor, was sleeping with my fiancé's best friend, our best man, and they were doing it right under our noses during the week of our wedding. I stayed in that alley for what felt like hours, trying to process the enormity of the betrayal. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Liam, who trusted Mark like a brother. It was about Sarah, Mark's sweet, pregnant wife, who was at home, probably picking out baby names, completely oblivious to the fact that her husband was a cheating snake. The thought of her made me physically sick. What was I supposed to do? Confronting them would lead to a massive explosion that would undoubtedly ruin the wedding. They would deny it, of course. They would call me a hysterical, jealous bride. They would twist it until I looked like the villain. Staying silent felt like swallowing poison, letting their deceit contaminate the most important day of my life. As I stood there, wrestling with my options, I heard the back door of the bar creak open. I shrank back into the shadows, not wanting to talk to anyone. But it wasn't one of my friends. It was Alex, our photographer. He was holding his camera, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Hey, Amelia," he said softly, his voice a calm anchor in my sea of chaos. "You okay? You disappeared. He must have been scouting the location, checking the lighting. I saw you leave. You looked upset." I just shook my head, unable to form words. He took a step closer, his eyes full of a genuine concern that I hadn't seen from my own sister in years. "If you ever need to talk," he said, "or if you ever need, I don't know, a neutral party to see things clearly, I'm here." His offer hung in the air, a lifeline I hadn't even known I needed. A neutral party. Someone who could see things clearly. Someone with a camera. An idea, wild and audacious, began to form in my mind. An idea born of desperation and a burning desire for justice. Confrontation would be their word against mine. But a picture is worth 1,000 denials. Alex's offer in that dark, quiet alleyway echoed in my mind for the next 2 days. A neutral party to see things clearly. The words were a life raft in the turbulent waters of my suspicion and grief. But how could I possibly ask him? How could I, a bride, ask my wedding photographer to become a private investigator? It sounded insane. The risk was enormous. If I was wrong, I would look like a jealous, paranoid monster. If he said no, or worse, if he thought I was so unstable that he mentioned it to Chloe or Liam, the fallout would be catastrophic. The trust between us would be shattered. So I did nothing. I pushed the idea down, telling myself I needed more than just a gut feeling and a few stolen glances. I needed something solid, something undeniable, before I could even think about involving someone else. The universe, it seems, decided to provide it for me. The rehearsal was scheduled for Friday evening, the day before the wedding. That morning, Chloe called me in a manufactured panic. "Ames, disaster! My maid of honor speech. I left the final draft on my work computer. I have to run to the office for an hour to grab it. I'll meet you all at the church." Her voice was breathless, full of the kind of drama she loved to create. "Don't be silly, Chloe," I said, my voice tight. "Just read it from your phone." No, she insisted. "It has all my notes and cues in the margins. It has to be the paper copy. Don't worry, I'll be super quick. I'll go now and be there before you even notice I'm gone." An hour later, I was at my parents' house, picking up the box of wedding favors. My mom was fussing over the ribbons when my dad called out from his study. "Amelia, can you come help me with this?" I walked into his office, and he was struggling to move a heavy box of old files. "Just need to get to the printer behind this," he grunted. As I helped him shove the box aside, my eyes fell on the desk. Lying next to the keyboard was Chloe's purse. She must have left it here last night after dropping off some supplies. Normally, I would never dream of looking inside. It felt like a violation of the highest order. But Liam's words and Alex's offer were swirling in my head. My intuition was screaming at me. This was a chance. A terrible, risky, but necessary chance. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My hands were trembling. My dad was still fiddling with the printer, his back to me. "Just a clogged nozzle," he muttered. I took a deep breath. "Just a quick look," I told myself. "I'm probably wrong anyway. This will prove I'm crazy, and then I can let it go." I unzipped the main compartment. Inside was the usual clutter: a wallet, a tube of lipstick, a tangle of charging cords, a half-eaten protein bar. Nothing. A wave of relief mixed with disappointment washed over me. I was crazy. I was making it all up. I started to zip the purse back up, but my fingers brushed against a side pocket I hadn't noticed. It was a small, slim compartment. My curiosity got the better of me. I slid my fingers inside and felt a single, crisp piece of folded paper. I pulled it out. It was a receipt A receipt from a place called the Willow Creek Inn. My stomach dropped. The Willow Creek Inn wasn't just any hotel. It was a notoriously romantic, secluded little boutique hotel about an hour out of town, known for being a place where people went when they didn't want to be found. It was the last place you'd go for a business meeting. I unfolded the paper with shaking hands. The date on the receipt was from 3 days ago, the evening of our joint bachelorette party. The time of check-in was 11:30 p.m., right after we had all left the bar. The charge was for one room, one night. And at the bottom there was a secondary charge from the hotel bar for 2 glasses of whiskey and a shared dessert. 2 glasses. She wasn't there alone. My eyes scanned the paper, desperately searching for a name, for any kind of confirmation. But it was just a standard credit card receipt, with the last 4 digits of her card number. It wasn't proof, not concrete proof, but it was everything. Chloe wasn't at her office right now retrieving a speech. That was a lie. Where was she? Who was she with? My mind raced, connecting the dots. The M on her phone, her constant texting, her manic energy that night, her disappearing act this morning. It all clicked into place with a sickening finality. She was with him. She had to be. "Got it!" my dad exclaimed, pulling a piece of paper triumphantly from the now working printer. He turned around, and I shoved the receipt back into my pocket, my movements jerky and clumsy. My face must have been as white as a sheet because his smile faded. "Amelia? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh that sounded more like a choke. "Just wedding jitters, Dad." "It's all hitting me," he nodded sympathetically, oblivious. "Deep breath, sweetheart. It's almost over." It's just beginning, I thought, the folded receipt burning a hole in my pocket. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I made my excuses and practically ran to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, the engine off, and pulled out the receipt again, staring at it until the numbers blurred. This was it, the solid ground I had been looking for. This piece of paper was the key. Now, I had a choice to make. I could confront her. I could show this receipt to Liam, to our parents. I could blow our lives apart the day before my wedding. The chaos, the drama, the denials. Chloe would twist it. She would say she went there with a girlfriend to distress. She would say I was a snooping, jealous psycho who was trying to ruin her life because my dress got torn. She was a master manipulator. She would turn everyone against me, and Mark would back her up, leaving Liam caught between his bride and his best friend. Or I could do something else. I could use this. I could take this piece of paper and turn it from a clue into a weapon. I thought about Alex's offer. A neutral party to see things clearly. He wasn't just a neutral party. He was a professional witness. He had a camera. He had the skills to capture the truth in a way that couldn't be denied or twisted. The wild, audacious idea from the alleyway came roaring back. But this time it wasn't just an idea. It felt like a plan. A terrifying, high-stakes but potentially brilliant plan. My hands were steady now. The frantic energy was gone, replaced by a strange, icy calm. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over Alex's contact information. This was the point of no return. The moment I pressed that button, I was setting in motion a chain of events that I couldn't stop. I thought about the torn dress. I thought about her triumphant laugh. I thought about the lifetime of being made to feel small. And then I thought about Sarah, at home, pregnant and trusting. I thought about Liam, whose loyalty was being so cruelly betrayed. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about exposing a rot that was poisoning all of our lives. I pressed the call button. He picked up on the second ring. Alex speaking. His voice was calm and professional. "Alex?" I said, my own voice surprisingly even. "It's Amelia. I need to take you up on your offer. I need someone to see things clearly. Can you meet me?" And can you bring your camera? There was a pause on the other end of the line, just long enough for a sliver of doubt to creep back in. I held my breath, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he'd think I was a lunatic bride to be, consumed by some last-minute paranoid fantasy. Maybe he'd hang up and call Liam to warn him that his fiancée was unraveling. The silence stretched, and I was just about to stammer an apology and say I'd made a mistake when he finally spoke, his voice low and serious, all professional cheeriness gone. Where and when? Relief washed over me so intensely that I felt lightheaded. The coffee shop on Elm Street. The daily grind. In 20 minutes? I suggested, choosing a place I knew would be relatively quiet in the middle of a weekday. I'll be there in 15, he said, and the line went dead. He hadn't asked questions. He hadn't sounded skeptical. He had simply agreed. That, more than anything, told me that he had seen something too. He wasn't just humoring me. He believed me. I drove to the coffee shop on autopilot, my mind a whirlwind of rehearsed speeches and frantic plans. How much should I tell him? Should I show him the receipt? The thought of laying bare my family's ugly secrets to a relative stranger was mortifying. But the alternative, letting Chloe and Mark get away with their poisonous betrayal, was unthinkable. I walked into the daily grind, the smell of roasted coffee beans and pastries, a comforting, normal scent in a world that had suddenly tilted on its axis. Alex was already there, sitting in a secluded booth in the back corner, a cup of black coffee untouched in front of him. His large camera bag was on the seat beside him. He wasn't just a photographer at this moment. He was an ally. He stood up as I approached, his expression unreadable, but his eyes kind. "Amelia," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Thanks for coming so quickly," I said, my voice barely a whisper as I slid into the booth. I fumbled in my purse, my hands still trembling slightly, and pulled out the folded receipt. I smoothed it out on the table between us without a word. He leaned forward, his eyes scanning the piece of paper. He took in the name of the inn, the date, the time, the charge for 2 drinks. He didn't say anything for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the receipt. Then he looked up and met my eyes. "The night of the bachelor party," he stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation. I nodded, the lump returning to my throat. Chloe said she was organizing last-minute details for me. She was on her phone all night, texting someone she had saved as M. I saw them at the bar later, the way they looked at each other, the way he touched her. My voice trailed off. I didn't need to say more. Alex leaned back, a thoughtful, almost sad expression on his face. "I saw it too," he said quietly. My head snapped up. "You did? At the bar?" he confirmed. "I was taking some candid shots of the group. They were in the background of a few frames." They were close. Too close. I deleted the shots. "Why?" I asked, my heart hammering. "It wasn't my place," he said, shrugging. "I'm hired to capture the happy memories, not the drama. I figured it was just a drunken flirtation. None of my business. But when I saw you in the alley, your face, I realized it might be more than that." His confirmation was like a dam breaking inside me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't inventing things. It was real. "She's been doing this my whole life," I blurted out, the words tumbling out of me in a rush, making me feel small, sabotaging my happiness. "She ruined my wedding dress 2 weeks ago, spilled red wine all over it, and ripped the skirt. And then she laughed. She actually laughed." Alex just listened, his gaze steady and patient, letting me unload the years of pent-up resentment and pain. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just let me speak. When I finally finished, my voice raw, I felt drained but also strangely lighter. "Today," I continued, my voice now a low, determined whisper, She called me this morning saying she had to go to her office to pick up her speech for the rehearsal dinner. That's an hour and a half away. We live 10 minutes from her office. I think she's with him. Right now. Alex looked at his watch. The rehearsal is at 5 p.m. It's almost noon. If they're together, they're probably feeling safe, thinking no one would ever suspect anything the day before the wedding. That's what I need you to do, I said, the words feeling heavy and momentous. I need you to find them. I need you to get proof. Proof that can't be denied. A picture. I felt my cheeks flush with shame. I was asking this kind, professional man to become a paparazzo, to spy on my sister. I know it's a terrible thing to ask, I said, my voice thick with emotion. It's unethical. It's not what you signed up for. If you say no, I will completely understand. I can pay you extra, whatever your price, Island. He held up a hand, stopping me. Amelia, this isn't about money. He looked from the receipt back to my face, and his expression had hardened. It was no longer just kind. It was resolute. What your sister did to your dress was cruel. What it sounds like she's doing to you, to Liam, and to Mark's wife, that's evil. I have a sister, too. If anyone ever treated her that way, let's just say I understand. He paused, taking a sip of his now cold coffee. Okay, he said. Here's what we'll do. You have any idea where they might be? My mind raced. If they're not at the Willow Creek Inn again, there's a park on the outskirts of town, Ridgeway Park. It's very secluded. Chloe always loved it because no one ever goes there. She used to take her boyfriends there in high school. It's a start, Alex said, already slinging his camera bag over his shoulder. What does Mark drive? A dark gray Ford Explorer, I answered immediately. Okay. You go to the church for the rehearsal setup. Act normal. Keep your phone on you. I'll go check the inn first, then the park. If I find anything, I'll text you a code word. Let's say lighting, as in just checking the lighting at the reception hall. That way, if anyone sees your phone, they won't suspect anything. Don't react. Don't do anything. Just know that I have what you need. Can you do that? Can you hold it together? I looked at him, my partner in crime, my unlikely savior. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was now overshadowed by a powerful sense of purpose. I was taking back control. I wasn't a victim cowering in the shadows anymore. I was a woman setting a trap. Yes, I said, my voice firm. I can do it. He gave me a single, sharp nod. Good. Stay strong, Amelia. I'll be in touch. He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone at the table with the receipt. I carefully folded it and put it back in my purse. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was the first shot fired in a war Chloe didn't even know she was fighting. I had my soldier. Now, all I had to do was wait for the signal that he had found the enemy. Walking into the old stone church for the rehearsal felt like stepping onto a stage for a performance I hadn't memorized the lines for. Every nerve in my body was screaming. My hands were clammy, and my heart was doing a frantic tap dance against my ribs. I had to be Amelia, the happy, slightly stressed bride. I had to smile at the florist arranging the altar bouquets, discuss the processional music with the organist, and laugh at Liam's dad's terrible jokes. All while a part of my brain was on high alert, waiting for a single word to pop up on my phone screen. Lighting. Liam was already there, directing his groomsmen, looking so handsome and happy and utterly oblivious that my heart ached. He saw me and his face lit up. He strode over and wrapped me in a hug, burying his face in my hair. "There's my beautiful bride," he murmured. "Feeling better today?" I forced myself to relax into his embrace, to return the hug with a convincing warmth. "Much better," I lied, my voice sounding impossibly normal. "Seeing you helps." Being in his arms felt both like a comfort and a betrayal. I was holding this massive, life-altering secret from him. A secret that would shatter his world as much as it had mine. The guilt was a heavy, suffocating cloak. Just then, Mark walked in, clapping Liam on the back. "There he is, the man of the hour. Ready to get this show on the road?" He was cheerful, relaxed, the perfect picture of a loyal best friend. He smiled at me. "Hey, Amelia, you're looking radiant." The hypocrisy was so staggering it almost made me choke. Here was the man who was actively sleeping with my sister, destroying his own marriage and betraying his best friend, complimenting me on my bridal glow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw his smiling face. Instead, I gave him a tight, brittle smile. "Thanks, Mark. So glad you could make it." My phone buzzed in my pocket. My hand flew to it, my heart leaping into my throat. But it was just a text from my mom. "Running 10 minutes late. Traffic is a nightmare." I took a shaky breath and forced my hand to relax. This was going to be a long afternoon. An hour later, Chloe breezed in, full of apologies and dramatic flair. "I am so sorry, everyone," she announced to the room. "My boss is a slave driver. He cornered me as I was leaving. You would not believe the crisis I had to solve." She was flushed, her hair slightly messy, and she had a glow about her, the unmistakable, radiant glow of a woman who had just been with her lover. She rushed over to me, giving me a theatrical hug. "Did I miss anything crucial?" she whispered, her breath smelling faintly of mint, as if she'd just tried to cover something up. "No," I said, my voice flat as I pulled away. "We were just waiting for you." We ran through the ceremony. Walking down the aisle on my dad's arm felt surreal. Standing at the altar across from Liam, reciting vows I wouldn't mean for another 24 hours, was an out-of-body experience. All the while, I was acutely aware of Chloe and Mark standing beside us. I could feel their presence, a toxic energy polluting what was supposed to be a sacred space. During a pause while the officiant was explaining a part of the ceremony, I saw it. Chloe, thinking no one was watching, reached back and subtly squeezed Mark's hand where it rested on the pew behind them. It was a tiny, possessive gesture, a silent acknowledgement of their shared secret. Mark's fingers curled around hers for a second before they broke apart. It was so fast, so discreet, that anyone else would have missed it. But I didn't. I saw everything. My phone buzzed again. My entire body tensed. I subtly pulled it from my pocket, shielding the screen with my hand. It was a text from Alex. My breath caught. Lighting. Just that one word. It was a coded message. A secret detonation. He had them. He had the proof. A wave of something wild and terrifying shot through me, a sickening cocktail of vindication, grief, and pure, unadulterated fury. I felt the blood drain from my face. Liam, noticing my expression, leaned over. "You okay? You look pale." I quickly locked my phone and shoved it back in my pocket, forcing a smile that felt like it would crack my face. "Fine. Just hungry, I think. Low blood sugar." It was a weak excuse, but he bought it, rubbing my back soothingly. "Don't worry. The rehearsal dinner is right after this. You can eat soon." The rest of the rehearsal passed in a blur. I was a robot, going through the motions, my mind a million miles away, picturing what Alex had captured. What did the photo show? A kiss? An embrace? Something more? The possibilities were sickening. I had to know. After the rehearsal, as everyone was milling about, gathering their things to head to the restaurant, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Alex. Subject: Wedding slideshow photos. "Hey, Amelia. I've uploaded a few extra candidates from today to the shared folder for the slideshow. Let me know if you want any of these included." The lighting was tricky in a few spots, but I got some good stuff. He was a genius. He had given me a perfectly plausible reason to be looking at a photo folder, and a way to see the evidence without raising any suspicion. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I found a quiet corner in the church vestibule, pretending to be making a call. "I'll be right there, Liam," I called out. "Just have to confirm something with the caterer." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type the password into the shared drive. I clicked on the folder he'd indicated. There were a few normal photos at the top, a picture of Liam laughing with his groomsmen, a shot of my parents holding hands. And then there were 3 new files at the bottom. I clicked on the first one. My breath hitched. It was a long-distance shot, taken through the trees. It was Mark's gray Ford Explorer, parked in a deserted corner of the Ridgeway Park lot. The second photo was closer. It showed the 2 of them, Chloe and Mark, walking on a secluded path, holding hands. Their heads were close together, their body language screaming intimacy. It was damning, but it could still, maybe, be explained away. We were just having a serious talk. He was comforting me. Chloe's voice echoed in my head. But the third photo was undeniable. It was a masterpiece of clandestine photography. Alex must have been hidden in the woods. They were standing by a small wooden bridge, thinking they were completely alone. Mark's back was to the camera, but Chloe was facing it, though her eyes were closed. His hands were cupping her face, and he was kissing her. Not a friendly peck, not a comforting gesture. It was a deep, passionate, all-consuming kiss. The kind of kiss that leaves no room for doubt. Chloe's hands were wrapped around his neck, her entire body pressed against his. It was a portrait of betrayal, captured in stunning, high-resolution clarity. I stared at the image, my vision blurring with tears. A wave of nausea washed over me. Seeing it, right there in front of me, was so much worse than just suspecting it. This was the ultimate violation. They hadn't just cheated. They had stolen moments of intimacy and passion while simultaneously participating in the sacred rituals of my impending marriage. They were spitting on everything it represented. I saved the photo to my phone, my movements stiff and robotic. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. But underneath the grief, the cold fire of rage was being stoked into a blazing inferno. They thought they were so clever, so discreet. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had no idea who they were dealing with. As I walked out of the church to join my family for a celebratory dinner, a new plan, a terrible and brilliant plan, began to take shape in my mind. The slideshow. Alex had just given me the perfect delivery system for my revenge. The rehearsal dinner wasn't just a celebration anymore. It was the final countdown. Sitting at the head table of the rehearsal dinner, I felt like a spy deep in enemy territory. The restaurant was beautiful, a cozy Italian place with twinkling fairy lights and the delicious aroma of garlic and basil hanging in the air. Our families and the wedding party filled a long table, their laughter and cheerful chatter echoing around me. It was a perfect picture of pre-wedding bliss. But for me, it was a scene from a horror movie. Every smile felt like a lie. Every toast felt like a mockery. On my phone, hidden in a locked folder, was the photograph, the irrefutable proof of the treachery sitting just a few feet away from me. Liam sat beside me, holding my hand, his face glowing with happiness. He was telling a funny story about a disastrous camping trip he and Mark had taken in college. Mark, sitting directly across from us, laughed along, adding details, playing his part as the loyal best friend to perfection. "I still can't believe you thought that was a shortcut." Mark guffawed, clapping Liam on the shoulder. Chloe, sitting next to him, giggled, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Mark. "You two are a disaster," she said, her voice full of affection. To everyone else at that table, it was a charming moment of camaraderie. To me, it was a nauseating performance. Their ability to sit there, to laugh and reminisce with the people they were so profoundly betraying, was sociopathic. Every time Chloe's gaze met mine, she would give me a sweet, sisterly smile. The same smile she'd given me my whole life, the one that was meant to reassure me, to remind me of our bond. But now, I saw it for what it was, a mask. A carefully constructed facade to hide the contempt she felt for me. She wasn't just cheating on her own long-term boyfriend, a fact that seemed to be a minor detail in her drama. She was actively trying to destroy my happiness, my marriage, and my relationship with my new family. The torn dress wasn't an isolated incident. It was the opening salvo in a war I hadn't known was being fought. The affair was the nuclear option. I excused myself to go to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe, to escape the suffocating hypocrisy of that room. I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone, staring at the photo again. The image of them kissing, so lost in each other, so completely oblivious to the world they were destroying, sent a fresh wave of rage through me. My first instinct was to storm back out there and throw the phone on the table, to expose them right then and there. I imagined the scene, the shouting, the denials, Sarah Mark's pregnant wife, who was sitting at the other end of the table looking radiant, bursting into tears. Liam's devastation. My parents' shock. The wedding would be called off. Our lives would be thrown into chaos. And that's when I realized that a simple confrontation was exactly what Chloe would want. It would create a storm of drama with her at the center. She would play the victim, crying that I was a hysterical bride, that the photo was a misunderstanding, that I was trying to ruin her life out of jealousy. She would twist the narrative until she had everyone's sympathy. She thrived on chaos. A quiet explosion wouldn't be justice. Justice, I realized with a chilling clarity, had to be public. It had to be undeniable. It had to be on my terms, in a venue of my choosing. The humiliation she had made me feel in that bridal boutique had to be returned to her, tenfold, in front of everyone she had ever tried to impress. My plan, which had been a vague notion, now solidified with terrifying precision. The wedding slideshow. It was perfect. It was a moment when everyone would be watching, their attention fixed on a single screen. It was a tradition meant to celebrate love and family, the perfect vessel to expose the ultimate betrayal of both. I needed more than just the one photo. One photo could be dismissed as a drunken mistake. I needed a narrative. I needed to show a pattern. I needed Alex. I sent him a text from the bathroom stall, my fingers flying across the screen. Me. They are putting on the performance of a lifetime. The one photo is perfect, but it's not enough. I need more. I need to show it wasn't a one-time thing. His reply came back almost instantly. Alex, I understand. They're getting sloppy. They think they're safe. Where are they staying tonight? I thought for a moment. Mark and Sarah were staying at the hotel connected to our wedding venue. Chloe was supposed to be staying at our parents' house. Me. Mark is at the Grand Hyatt, room 812. Chloe is supposed to be at my parents'. Alex. She won't be. She'll go to him. I'll be waiting. Stay off your phone. I will get you what you need. I'll drop a USB drive in the mailbox at your apartment before 8 a.m. tomorrow. It will be labeled Final Slideshow. The rest is up to you. I walked back to the table, my heart a block of ice in my chest. I had just hired my wedding photographer to conduct a late-night stakeout of my sister and my husband's best friend. The moral lines I was crossing were starting to blur, but I didn't care. They had burned the rulebook. Now, we were playing a different game. The rest of the dinner was an exercise in supreme self-control. I listened to my father give a heartfelt toast about the joy of seeing his two daughters so happy. I smiled as Liam's mother welcomed me to the family, saying she couldn't have wished for a more perfect wife for her son. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. At the end of the night, as we were all saying our goodbyes, Chloe hugged me tightly. "Get a good night's sleep, little sister," she whispered in my ear. "Tomorrow is your big day." Over her shoulder, I saw Mark give Liam a brotherly hug. "See you at the altar, man," he said. Their audacity was breathtaking. I went back to my apartment alone that night, as Liam was staying with his parents. I didn't sleep. I just sat on my couch in the dark, staring at the door, waiting for the sun to rise. I felt like a general on the eve of a great battle. I was terrified, grief-stricken, and filled with a righteous fury that burned away any doubt. Chloe had laughed when she ruined my dress. She had laughed at my pain. Tomorrow, at my wedding, in front of 200 guests, I would make sure she never laughed at me again. The slideshow wouldn't just be a collection of memories. It would be a tribunal, and I would be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, a picture-perfect June day. Sun streamed through my apartment window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was the kind of beautiful morning that poets write about, the kind every bride dreams of. But as I stood there, watching the city slowly wake up, I felt no joy, only a heavy, cold dread mixed with a steely resolve. My wedding day had arrived, but it no longer felt like a celebration of love. It felt like the day of reckoning. At 7:45 a.m., I heard the faint clink of the mail slot. My heart leaped into my throat. I waited a full minute, my ears straining for any sound of footsteps retreating, before I crept to the door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw the hallway was empty. I opened the door just a crack and looked down. There it was, a small, black USB drive lying on the welcome mat. A simple white label was affixed to it, with 2 words written in neat, black ink. Final slideshow. Alex had delivered. My weapon had arrived. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It felt impossibly heavy, charged with the weight of the secrets it held. I rushed to my laptop, my fingers fumbling as I plugged it in. A single video file appeared on the screen. With a deep, shuddering breath, I clicked play. It wasn't just a collection of photos. Alex had outdone himself. He had created a short, silent video. The first scene was security footage from the hotel lobby, time-stamped at 1:15 a.m. It showed Chloe, looking over her shoulder, scurrying towards the elevators. The next scene was clearly taken by Alex himself, hidden down the hall. It showed Chloe knocking softly on the door of room 812. The door opened, and Mark pulled her inside. The final few seconds of the video were the most damning of all. The camera was zoomed in on the window of their room. The curtains weren't fully closed. Through the gap, a silhouette was visible. 2 figures, melting into one. There was no sound, but none was needed. The story it told was clear, sordid, and irrefutable. After the video, there were the still photos. The ones from the park, and several new ones, captured with a long lens camera from across the street, showing them arriving at the hotel. I closed the laptop, feeling sick to my stomach. This was it. The full, unvarnished truth. The cold, calculated betrayal laid bare. I copied the files onto another USB drive, the one I would give to the DJ. I labeled it Amelia and Liam, slideshow in my own loopy handwriting. I then took Alex's USB drive and tucked it away in a safe place. I had to protect him. He had taken a huge professional risk for me, and I would not let him face any repercussions. Just then, my doorbell rang. A cheerful, jarring sound. It was Chloe, my bridesmaids, and my mom, armed with coffee, bagels, and mimosas, ready to start the day of primping and prepping. Chloe was glowing, her energy effervescent. "Morning, beautiful bride," she chirped, kissing my cheek. "Ready for the best day of your life?" The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I had to compartmentalize my emotions, lock the vengeful, heartbroken woman in a box deep inside me, and let the happy, excited bride take over. It was the hardest performance of my life. For the next few hours, I was on autopilot. I let them fuss over my hair and makeup. I smiled as they told stories and laughed at jokes. I sipped my mimosa and pretended to share in their excitement. Chloe was the perfect maid of honor, a whirlwind of efficiency and charm. She steamed my new dress, a simple but elegant off-the-rack gown. Isabella the seamstress had helped me find in a frantic, tear-filled rush. She organized the bridesmaids, coordinated with the makeup artist, and made sure everyone had something to eat. She was playing her part so perfectly, so convincingly, that for a fleeting moment, I almost doubted myself. Could I really be right about her? But then I would see her check her phone with a small, secret smile, or I would catch her eye in the mirror and see that flicker of something cold and calculating behind the facade. And I knew this was all part of the act. The most difficult moment came when it was time to put on my dress. My mom helped me into it, her hands gentle. As she fastened the buttons up the back, her eyes filled with tears. "You are so beautiful, Amelia," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father is going to be so proud." I looked at my reflection. The makeup artist had done a wonderful job. I looked like a bride. My hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. My makeup was flawless. My dress was beautiful. But my eyes held a secret. They were the eyes of a woman walking towards an execution, not a wedding. Chloe came and stood behind me, placing her hands on my shoulders. "See," she said, her voice soft. "I told you we'd find a better dress. This one is so much more you. That other one was a bit much, don't you think?" It was a final, cruel twist of the knife. She was not only admitting her sabotage, but framing it as a favor. She had saved me from my own bad taste. In that moment, any last, lingering shred of doubt I had about my plan evaporated. She deserved what was coming to her. She deserved to have her own perfect facade ripped away, just as she had ripped the fabric of my dress. At the church, waiting in the vestibule with my dad, my heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. He squeezed my hand. "Nervous?" he asked, smiling. "Terrified," I answered honestly. He chuckled. "Don't be. Liam is a good man. You're going to have a wonderful life." I just nodded, unable to speak. As the music started and the heavy doors swung open, I saw Liam standing at the altar. His face was filled with so much love, so much hope. A wave of guilt washed over me. He had no idea that our celebration was about to become a spectacle, but this was the only way. A clean, surgical cut to remove the cancer that was poisoning our lives. I walked down the aisle, my gaze fixed on him. I recited my vows, my voice clear and steady, even as my insides were churning. I looked into his eyes and promised to love and honor him, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. This act, this terrible public act of revenge, was, in its own twisted way, the ultimate act of honoring our marriage. It was me, refusing to let our life together be built on a foundation of lies. As the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and Liam leaned in to kiss me, I thought, I'm sorry for what's about to happen, but this is for us. The cheers of our friends and family filled the church, but all I could hear was the ticking of a clock, counting down to the moment the slideshow would begin. The transition from the sacred, hopeful atmosphere of the church to the glittering, celebratory chaos of the reception hall was jarring. Our guests, buzzing with joy and champagne, filled the elegant ballroom. The tables were adorned with beautiful floral centerpieces, Candles flickered, and a live band played soft jazz in the corner. It was a scene straight out of a bridal magazine, a perfect illusion of happiness and love. Liam and I made our grand entrance. We had our first dance, and we cut the cake. I moved through each tradition like a ghost, a smile plastered on my face, my body present but my mind far away, counting down the minutes. The speeches were the most agonizing part. My father's toast was sweet and emotional, filled with memories of my childhood. Liam's mother gave a lovely speech welcoming me to the family. Then it was Mark's turn. He stood up, glass in hand, the picture of a devoted best man. He spoke of his lifelong friendship with Liam, of their shared adventures and unwavering loyalty. And when Liam brought Amelia into our lives, he said, turning to me with a sincere smile, I knew he had found his match. Amelia, you make my best friend happier than I have ever seen him. You are kind, you are patient, and you have a heart of gold. Welcome to the family. The room applauded warmly. I felt a wave of nausea. His hypocrisy was so profound, so effortless. It was almost admirable. He was a master of deceit. Then came Chloe. She glided to the microphone, looking stunning in her emerald dress. Every inch the proud, adoring sister. Her speech was a masterpiece of passive aggression and veiled insults, all wrapped in a sweet, sentimental package. She told a story about how I used to be so shy and insecure, how she always had to protect me. I used to worry so much about my quiet little sister, she said, her voice trembling with fake emotion as she looked at me. But seeing you today, so beautiful and confident, marrying such a wonderful man, it just makes my heart so full. Liam, you've brought my sister out of her shell. Thank you for taking care of her. She was painting a picture of me as a fragile, mousy creature who had been saved by a man, subtly diminishing my own strength and character while positioning herself as my lifelong protector. It was her classic move, and it made my blood boil. She finished by raising her glass. To Amelia and Liam, may your life together be as beautiful and perfect as this day has been. As she returned to her seat, the applause thundering, I knew it was time. The DJ approached our table. Mr. and Mrs. Davies, are we ready for the slideshow? He asked, smiling. Liam nodded eagerly, squeezing my hand. Absolutely. I stood up, my legs feeling surprisingly steady. I took the microphone from the stand. Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate with us, I began, my voice clear and calm. I looked around the room, making eye contact with my parents, with Liam's parents, with Sarah, who was beaming at me from her seat. My gaze finally landed on Chloe. I especially want to thank my sister and maid of honor, Chloe, I said, my voice sweet as honey. She has been instrumental in making this day unforgettable. She's always looked out for me, always wanted what's best for me, and has taught me so many valuable lessons, especially recently. She taught me that sometimes things that look broken or ruined can actually be a blessing in disguise. She taught me that truth, no matter how ugly, is always better than a beautiful lie. And she taught me that you should always pay close attention to the pictures, because they capture moments you might otherwise miss. A flicker of confusion crossed Chloe's face. My speech was not what she expected. I turned to the DJ. We're ready, I said, giving him a small, sharp nod. I handed him the USB drive I had prepared. He slotted it into his laptop. The house lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to the large projector screen. The slideshow began just as I had planned. The first few photos were normal, lulling everyone into a sense of security. A picture of me and Liam as kids, from different family albums cleverly edited together. A photo from our first date. A shot of us on vacation. The room was filled with soft awes. Then came a picture of the four of us, me, Liam, Chloe, and Mark, at a barbecue last summer, all smiles. The next photo was from our engagement party. Everyone looked so happy. And then, the screen went black. The music stopped. For a full 3 seconds, there was nothing but silence and darkness. I could feel the tension in the room, a low hum of confusion. And then the video I had received that morning began to play. No music, just the silent, grainy footage. Chloe, scurrying through the hotel lobby. Chloe, knocking on the door of room 812. Mark, pulling her inside. And then, the final, damning shot. The two of them, silhouetted against the window, locked in an unmistakable embrace. A sound rippled through the room, a series of sharp, confused gasps. People were leaning forward, squinting at the screen, murmuring to their neighbors. "What is this? Is that Chloe?" Before they could fully process what they were seeing, the video ended, and the still photos began. The picture of them walking hand in hand in the park. And then the kiss. The stunning, high-resolution, undeniable kiss. It filled the entire screen, a monument to their betrayal. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. It was as if a bomb had gone off in the ballroom. Someone screamed. A glass shattered, but above it all, I heard one sound, clear as a bell. A strangled, guttural cry of pure agony. It was Sarah, Mark's pregnant wife. I saw her stand up, her hand flying to her mouth, her face a mask of utter devastation, before she collapsed back into her chair, sobbing hysterically. I finally turned to look at the head table. My mother's face was ashen, her mouth agape in disbelief. My father looked like he had been physically struck. Liam, my poor, sweet Liam, was staring at the screen. Then at Mark, his expression a mixture of confusion, horror, and dawning, furious realization. Mark himself looked like a cornered animal, his face pale and sweaty, his eyes darting around the room for an escape that didn't exist. But my focus was on Chloe. All the color had drained from her face. She was frozen, her fork halfway to her mouth, her eyes locked on the image of her own betrayal, magnified for all the world to see. Her mask of sweet perfection had not just slipped, it had been violently ripped away, exposing the ugly, deceitful creature underneath. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and pure, undiluted hatred. In that moment, she finally understood. The torn dress, the secret smiles, the lies. I had seen it all, and this was her punishment. The laughter had stopped. And as chaos erupted around us, I felt a strange, cold, and deeply satisfying sense of peace. The fairy tale was over, and the truth had set me free. The ballroom descended into absolute pandemonium. It was a cacophony of shouting, crying, and the frantic scraping of chairs as people scrambled to their feet. Sarah's heart-wrenching sobs were the soundtrack to the scene, each one a fresh indictment of the two people who had caused her such profound pain. Her family rushed to her side, shielding her from the curious, horrified stares of the other guests. Mark, for his part, was completely paralyzed, his face a ghastly shade of gray. He looked at Liam, his mouth opening and closing, desperate to form an excuse, a denial, anything, but Liam wasn't looking at him. Liam's eyes, cold and filled with a fury I had never seen before, were locked on my sister. Chloe finally broke from her trance. She shot to her feet, knocking her chair over with a loud clatter. "Amelia! How could you?" she shrieked, her voice a shrill, hysterical cry of a villain who had been caught. "How could you do this to me? On your wedding day?" The audacity of her words, the way she instantly painted herself as the victim, was so perfectly Chloe that I almost had to laugh. She turned to our parents, her face streaked with tears. "She's lying! She's always been jealous of me. She photoshopped those. She did this to ruin my life." But for the first time ever, her performance fell flat. Our mother was staring at her, her expression not one of sympathy, but of dawning horror and disgust. Our father, a man I had never seen truly angry in my life, stood up, his face a thunderous mask. He looked from the screen to his crying daughter, and the years of denial, of favoring the golden child, seemed to crumble away in an instant. He simply shook his head, a look of profound disappointment in his eyes. He didn't need to say a word. Chloe's greatest weapon, her ability to manipulate our parents, had just been neutralized. Liam finally moved. He stood up slowly, deliberately. He didn't shout. He didn't cause a scene. He walked calmly around the table until he was standing in front of Mark. "Get out," he said, his voice dangerously low, each word dripping with ice. "Get out of here before I do something we both regret." Mark, looking utterly broken, stumbled away from the table, pushing through the stunned crowd, not even glancing back at his weeping, pregnant wife. Then, Liam turned to me. He ignored the chaos, the shouting, the crying. He walked back to my side, took my hand, and lifted it to his lips. He looked me straight in the eye, and in his gaze, I saw no anger towards me, only a deep, unwavering love and a shared, righteous fury. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, his voice for my ears only. "Let's get out of here." He turned and faced the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice ringing with authority, cutting through the noise. "As you can see, we have some family matters to attend to. The bar is open. Please, enjoy the rest of the evening on us." And with that, he took my hand, and we walked out of that ballroom, leaving the smoldering wreckage of our reception behind us. We didn't go on our planned honeymoon to Hawaii. Instead, we drove to a small, quiet cabin in the mountains that Liam's family owned. We spent the next week in near total silence. We built fires. We went for long walks in the woods. We cooked simple meals, and we just were. We held each other. We talked when we needed to, and we sat in comfortable silence when we didn't. It was a week of healing, of processing the blast radius of the bomb I had detonated. Liam was my rock. He wasn't angry that our wedding had become a scandal. He was just heartbroken by the dual betrayal of his best friend and the woman he had been about to call his sister. But our bond, forged in honesty and tested by fire, had become unbreakable. We had faced the ugliest truth together and had come out the other side, stronger. The fallout, as we learned from a few select phone calls, was immense. Mark's wife, Sarah, filed for divorce the very next day. Chloe became a social pariah. Her friends, having witnessed her cruelty and deceit firsthand, abandoned her. Her long-term boyfriend, the one she had been cheating on, broke up with her via text message after seeing the video, which had inevitably been shared all over social media. She had to quit her job due to the scandal. My parents, for their part, were forced to confront a lifetime of dysfunctional family dynamics. Their relationship with Chloe was shattered, and they were trying, awkwardly but sincerely, to rebuild a real, honest relationship with me. When we returned to the city, life was different. It was quieter. The toxic cloud of Chloe's presence had been lifted. I half expected to feel guilty, to regret the public humiliation I had caused. But I didn't. I felt a profound sense of peace. I had not just saved my marriage from being built on a lie. I had saved myself. I had finally stood up to my lifelong tormentor and had taken back my own narrative. A few weeks later, I was in my bakery, kneading dough. The familiar, comforting rhythm, a form of therapy. The little bell above the door chimed. and Alex, the photographer, walked in. He looked awkward, unsure of his welcome. I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled. A real, warm smile. "I never got to thank you," I said. He shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "I was just the guy with the camera. You were the one who had the courage to use the photos." He bought a coffee and a croissant, and we talked for a while. He told me he'd been offered several jobs from guests at the wedding who were impressed by his discretion and artistry. My act of revenge had inadvertently boosted his career. My life with Liam is not a fairy tale. It's something better. It's real. It's built on a foundation of radical honesty, mutual respect, and the knowledge that we can weather any storm together. We lost friends and fractured our families that day, but what we gained was a future free from secrets and lies. My sister tried to ruin my wedding day, a day meant to be the start of my new life. And in a way, she succeeded. It wasn't the perfect, blissful day I had dreamed of, but what she gave me instead was a different kind of gift. She gave me the opportunity to burn down the old life, the one where I was the quiet, overlooked sister, and to rise from the ashes, strong, confident, and finally free. She laughed at my torn dress, but I got the last laugh, because I didn't just expose her affair, I exposed the truth, and that is a picture that will last forever.